Our speaker this morning, an exceptional talent. The man is a real doctor, you know, not a tree surgeon. Not that they're not important. Okay. Dr. Stair, Dr. Stephen Stair, one of our own. University of Tennessee at Knoxville.
So we had a good day yesterday too?
Hey, look at that. All right.
Finally.
This is nonpartisan.
Yeah, I know.
Okay. Memphis Medical School, UT Memphis. Residency at UAB, our own UAB. 18 years at UAB. He's still there.
18 years.
You can get an appointment with him. All right. Now, the only... Yes.
I'm really close. Still practicing.
The only risk is he is the EMR, the electronic medical records guy. He is the compliance officer. So if you were standing with him in a parking lot outside, watch out. There have been 6 attempts on his life from other doctors. He played basketball and tennis. He loves to travel, but he can't go because he's a medical doctor. He has to go to work every day. 2003, he nearly died. Acute pancreatitis. So he's more sensitive than most doctors to your conditions.
Yeah,
in other words, you come in and say, I'm really feeling bad. He doesn't say, get out of here. I want somebody that's really sick. No, he doesn't do that. A man who gave up a distinguished career as possible head of the citizen snooping program for the government, but instead is the compliance officer at UAB, Dr. Stephen Stair.
Thank you. Don't we all just come to this class to hear Russ introduce the speakers? It's one of my favorite parts. I do a lot of speaking to a lot of physicians, thousands over the last few years, mostly thanks to Steve Brandon. If he's here, he started me off on that. So, but I'm always, more anxious about this stuff because I know that stuff pretty well. And I'm not a biblical scholar. I see patients every day, and I'm really blessed to do what I do. So I'm really honored when Russ asked me about once a year to come, and I have to figure out what to talk about. And I've realized, as most of you have in here, as you get older, life gets harder. Anybody realize that? Yeah. More things happen to you, more things happen to your loved ones, and you start thinking more about things like this. So I was kind of inspired by Tom Booth. He did a Revelations class for us in our Connect group. Is Tom here? He may be out of town. And he did a great job. And when we got to the end of Revelations and I started reading about heaven, I thought, what a great topic to talk about in our class this morning. So I'm going to talk about heaven. And I'm not an expert. You have much more knowledge than I do, probably, and have probably been in some class. Anybody been in a class just about heaven in the past? It's not really something we talk about a whole lot. So I wanted to...
Anybody been to heaven?
Nope. It's funny you should ask, because we'll talk about that too. So I have no answers. All I have is what the Bible tells us. So we just barely got this set up today, so I don't know how it'll work out. So I'm going to talk just first of all about media. Everybody has their favorite movies and things about heaven. Or some of the Old Testament views of heaven. Did they know much about it then? Did they have an innate, knowledge about heaven at that time? What does heaven look like? That's kind of what we'll spend most of our time. I got lots and lots of Bible verses here. Probably too many for you guys to try to fumble through and find them, but you're welcome if you want to. I'll certainly say them all. And then at the end, we'll talk about what Jesus says about heaven. 2 things I'm not going to answer. What do we look like in heaven? And is your dog going to heaven? Not going to answer that one. So this is kind of a funny, view. We'll all be in our nice Sunday clothes and we'll get to heaven, I guess. So I always love that picture. Who knows what this is from?
Heaven Can Wait.
Yes. Good. Heaven Can Wait. That was a movie back in the 70s with Warren Beatty that showed some views of heaven that was more like an escalator going up to a giant Learjet to take you off to heaven. Anybody know this one? This one's a little bit harder. This is from a movie. Yeah. What Dreams May Come. Robin Williams dies in a car accident, goes to heaven, experiences these amazing things with really good special effects, but then he misses his wife, and she ends up in hell, where he has to go try to find her down there. So, anybody know this one? Yeah, the Deathly Hallows. This was a train station that was heaven, I guess. This next one, this is one of my, hopefully this will work with the sound, but this is one of my favorite scenes from Lord of the Rings. This is the venerable Gandalf talking to one of the hobbits about what heaven's like. Let's see if it works. Well, this is what I went from Mac to Windows, so it may not work.
Do the scene for us.
Well, I will. They're about to be killed by these horrible trolls, and Gandalf is talking to Pippin about heaven, and he talks about it being a far green country with silver shores and a swift sunrise, and it makes it sound pretty good. So someday I'll show you that scene. Anybody see this? This is from, I think, last year in Newsweek. A neurosurgeon wrote a book about his real experience going to heaven. He went into a coma from a bacterial infection for 7 days. He was out, and he had lots and lots of really fantastic experiences that he talked about. You've probably seen this one too, the little boy that had an appendectomy, was on the table and died for a short time, and over a course of years told his parents about what all he saw in heaven, his great-grandfather he met, the baby that was miscarried, that was his sister that he met. And you kind of take these honestly with a grain of salt, and what we see a lot of times is that they're beat down as not being true. And these people really make a lot of money off these stories too. So whether you believe in those experiences or not, that's kind of what we have. Kind of in our culture, we even have a Christian rebuttal to the heaven is for real. So a lot of Christians looked at that book and thought, not so sure about that either. This is one of my favorites. This lady actually says that she had a divine revelation of heaven, and then she went the other way too. So she went to both places with Jesus as her guide and has really wild stories about this. So anyway, these are the kind of things in our culture that we don't really have any idea, what heaven's all about. So let's just kind of talk about a few things in the Old Testament. First, what did they think in the Old Testament? It's interesting, a lot of the Psalms really were very negative about death. Psalm 39, what profit is there in my death if I go down to the pit? Will the dust praise you? Will it tell of your faithfulness? Psalm 88:10, do you work wonders for the dead? Do the departed rise up to praise you? Psalm 115:17, the dead do not praise the Lord, nor do any who go down into silence. Isaiah 38:18, for Sheol does not thank you, death does not praise you, those who go down to the pit do not hope for your faithfulness. Ecclesiastes 9:5, for the living know they will die, but the dead do not know anything, nor have they any longer a reward, for their memory is forgotten. So there was some confusion about heaven, I think, in the Old Testament from some of those folks, but really, if you look deeply at these folks, the patriarchs Job, Isaiah, Moses, David, some of the Psalms, there was a really deep understanding of heaven. So Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob all breathed their last, died at a good old age, an old man full of years, and he was gathered to his people. Job talks very deeply about heaven. He says, if only you would hide me in the grave and conceal me till your anger has passed. If only you would set me a time and then remember me. If someone dies, will they live again? All the days of my hard service, I will wait for my renewal to come. Isaiah 26:19, one of my favorites. But your dead will live, Lord, their bodies will rise. Let those who dwell in the dust wake up and shout for joy. Your dew is like the dew of the morning. The earth will give birth to her dead. And Isaiah 65:17-19, I don't have that one up here. See, I will create new heavens and a new earth. The former things will not be remembered, nor will they come to mind. But be glad and rejoice forever in what I will create, for I'll create Jerusalem to be a delight, and its people a joy. I will rejoice over Jerusalem and take delight in my people. The sound of weeping and of crying will be heard in it no more. Now that's going to sound familiar, very familiar when we get to Revelations. Moses talked about it in Deuteronomy. Look down from heaven, your holy dwelling place, and bless your people Israel in the land you have given us as you promised on oath to our ancestors, a land flowing with milk and honey. He definitely understood about heaven. And then David said, of course, in Psalm 23:6, surely your goodness and love will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. So God's people understood that there was a place beyond this one. There's a verse in Hebrews that the Hebrew writer really talks about what these people felt. So in Hebrews 11:13-16, all these people were still living by faith when they died. And this is, of course, the hall of faith folks that are in Hebrews 11. They did not receive the things promised. They only saw them and welcomed them from a distance, admitting that they were foreigners and strangers on earth. People who say such things show that they are looking for a country of their own. If they had been thinking of the country they had left, they would have had opportunity to return. Instead, they were longing for a better country, a heavenly one. Therefore, God is not ashamed to be called their God, for He has prepared a city for them. Love those verses in the Old Testament about heaven. Now, Paul had his own kind of near-death experience where it was a vision. And he said, I must go on boasting, and he's talking about boasting in the Lord. Although there's nothing to be gained, I will go on to visions and revelations from the Lord. I know a man in Christ who 14 years ago was caught up to the third heaven. Whether it was the body, in the body or out of the body, I do not know. God knows. And I know that this man, whether in the body or apart from the body, I do not know, but God knows, was caught up to paradise and heard inexpressible things, things that no one is permitted to tell. So the third heaven is the heaven past our atmosphere and past outer space to the realm of God. And as you look and do research and see commentaries, that's fairly well understood, actually. And when Paul's talking about he knew a man, it's pretty clear he's talking about himself. So Paul has actually a heaven experience. One of the many reasons why he was so bold, because he had seen it already. He had seen Jesus in his Damascus experience, and he had also been up into the third heaven, where he saw what he calls inexpressible things that no one's permitted to tell. So I want to talk a little bit about Revelations. So if you'll go ahead and turn to Revelations 21. And I'm going to read part of this, and then we'll kind of talk a little bit about it. This is pretty amazing stuff to me. And I really had never done a study of Revelations to see exactly what John's vision was and what he saw when the angel took him, the Isle of Patmos, to this place. So let's read 21. First of all, we'll read just verses 1 through 8. Talk about that a little bit. Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth. For the first heaven and the first earth had passed away, and there was no longer any sea. I saw the holy city, the new Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride, beautifully dressed for her husband. And I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, Look, God's dwelling place is now among the people, and He will dwell with them. They will be His people, and God Himself will be with them and be their God. He will wipe every tear from their eyes. There will be no more death, or mourning, or crying, or pain, for the old order of things has passed away. He who was seated on the throne said, I am making everything new. Then He said, Write this down, for these words are trustworthy and true. He said to me, It is done. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. To the thirsty, I will give water without cost from the spring of the water of life. Those who are victorious will inherit all this, and I will be their God, and they will be my children. But the cowardly, the unbelieving, the vile, the murderers, the sexually immoral, those who practice magic arts, the idolaters, and all liars, they will be consigned to the fiery lake of burning sulfur. This is the second death. Wow. So the new earth will replace this earth. The new heaven will replace the heavens. And the holy city will come down out of the new heaven, and our current earth and our first heaven will be no more. No more death, no mourning, no crying, no pain. The old order of things has passed away, and He will make everything new. And this is where it's really hard for us to fathom that. I think He's making everything new. The old order for us now is suffering and trouble and pain, and that's really very strongly brought out in the Bible. This is going to be different. This is going to be made new. It's something that we really can't fathom. It's kind of inexpressible. God will dwell with His people here. And we'll continue reading as we look at some of these observations. The victorious will inherit this city in eternity. These are the believers. These are the courageous. These are folks that have given their lives to Him. To the thirsty, He'll give water from the spring of life without cost. And the wicked, we're not talking about that part today, will be consigned to the fiery lake of burning sulfur, the second death. And I think it's pretty clear that these are actual places. Okay? This new heaven, this holy city is an actual place. So as we go on to the next set of verses, it gets even more amazing and interesting. So from verse 9 to 21. One of the 7 angels who had the 7 bowls full of the 7 last plagues came and said to me, "Come, I will show you the bride, the wife of the Lamb." And he carried me away in the Spirit to a mountain great and high, and showed me the holy city, Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God. It shone with the glory of God, and its brilliance was like that of a very precious jewel, like a jasper, clear as crystal. It had a great high wall with 12 gates, and with 12 angels at the gates. On the gates were written the names of the 12 tribes of Israel. There were 3 gates on the east, 3 on the north, 3 on the south, and 3 on the west. The wall of the city had 12 foundations, and on them were the names of the 12 apostles of the Lamb. The angel who talked with me had a measuring rod of gold to measure the city, its gates and its walls. The city was laid out like a square, as long as it was wide. He measured the city with the rod and found it to be 12,000 stadia in length, and as wide and high as it is long. The angel measured the wall using human measurement, and it was 144 cubits thick. The wall was made of jasper, and the city of pure gold, as pure as glass. The foundations of the city walls were decorated with every kind of precious stone. The first foundation was jasper, the second sapphire, the third agate, the fourth emerald, the fifth onyx, the sixth ruby, the 7th chrysolite, the 8th beryl, the 9th topaz, the 10th turquoise, the 11th jacinth, and the 12th amethyst. The 12 gates were 12 pearls, each gate made of a single pearl. The great street of the city was of gold, as pure as transparent glass. Now those numbers, anybody know what a stadia equals? 12,000 stadia is 1,500 miles. So the city by square miles is 1,500 by 1,500 square miles, and this is about what it would be. But you also have to, if you take this as it's stated, remember that it was as high as it was long. So if you do the math about 1,500 by 1,500, that's 2.25 million square miles. But then you have to go up 1,500 miles as well, which is 3.75 billion cubic miles. And I read something that was really interesting to me, that somebody worked it out, that if every single inhabitant on Earth was allocated a quarter of a cubic mile in heaven, as it's described in the Bible, 216 billion people could fit in there. So it's almost impossible to really think about those kind of numbers. Estimates of Earth's population all time have been from 45 billion to 125 billion. So basically it could hold twice as many people as have ever lived on the Earth. Now, is it orbiting the new Earth? There are some people that think it actually would be. Too big physically to actually sit on the Earth. It would be orbiting like this, kind of like this picture would be. And so, you know, the jewels are something that actually found this, that is every jewel that was described. If you can imagine the foundations, the 12 foundations, being each one of these different types of jewels. That's pretty amazing too, to imagine. And I thought it was really amazing that these people, these humble people that we read about in the Old Testament, and then the apostles that Jesus selected, are eternally embedded in the holy city, the city of heaven. There's so many things that came. We're studying the book of Acts right now with our last leaders class, and I try to tell those kids, my goodness, the things that happened in this book are the reason you're here. We went from 120 Christians when Jesus died to 2.1 billion today. And those people, those apostles in those early days, are now embedded in heaven forever. Okay, as we read on to verse 22 through the end, 27. I did not see a temple in the city. And that's something that, of course, any Jew would have expected to see, a temple, because the Lord God Almighty and the Lamb are its temple. The city does not need the sun or the moon to shine on it, for the glory of God gives it light, and the Lamb is its lamp. The nations will walk by its light, and the kings of earth will bring their splendor into it. On no day will its gates ever be shut, for there will be no night there. The glory and honor of the nations will be brought into it. Nothing impure will ever enter it, nor will anyone who does what is shameful or deceitful, but only those whose names are written in the Lamb's book of life. So the Lord and the Lamb are the temple. There is no place that's a temple. The entire place is the temple. That's also called the bride. Okay? God's glory gives the city light, always. The gates are always open. There's no sun, there's no moon. The way that I think it's envisioned from my learning about this and research is that I had one writer say that the holy city exists with the people, but the new earth still has God's nations under it. And there can even maybe be movement back and forth. I don't know. Somebody brought out the Jacob's ladder analogy where saints, Christians, and nations could go back and forth between the city and the new earth. Those are hard for me to get my brain around. Its gates will never be shut, and there's no night, and nothing impure will enter it. I love this chapter. I'm not going to go to chapter 22, but I want to spend a little bit of time just to kind of end up here, and then love to take questions that you guys can answer. What does Jesus teach us about heaven? Well, if you ask Jesus about heaven, he would be real interested, I think, in telling you what it looks like. But what would he be more interested in? In us getting there, right? And so Jesus talked about heaven a lot. In John 14, 1-4, do not let your hearts be troubled. You believe in God, believe also in me. My Father's house has many rooms. If that were not so, would I have told you that I'm going there to prepare a place for you? And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come back and take you to be with me, that you also may be where I am. You know the way to the place where I'm going. It is a place. He's there. He's preparing it now for us. Matthew 6:19-21. Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moths and vermin destroy, and where thieves break in and steal. But store up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where moths and vermin do not destroy, where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. So heaven is here. It is real. It is a place that our actions now are affecting, and our actions are critical to our future there as well. So when you hear this description and you read about it and you think about it, this is where we want to be. And Jesus spent most of his time keeping us out of trouble and directing us toward the path to get there. So in Matthew 25, of course, he has the parables about the 10 virgins and the bags of gold, the virgins that missed Jesus as the bridegroom as he came to take them on to the wedding. And then, of course, the bags of gold were the 3 men who were given different amounts to work with, and the one who had one and buried it was forced out to weeping and gnashing of teeth. But I want to read about the sheep and the goats, because this is just where I'm going to finish up, and this is really Jesus' focus. And my focus today is not just to talk about that description, but to talk about how we need to live so that we can get there. So in in Matthew 25, 31-46. When the Son of Man comes in his glory and all the angels with him, he will sit on his glorious throne. And everything Jesus said really fits exactly with what Paul's vision was, or what John's vision was of heaven. I thought that was interesting as well. All the nations will be gathered before him, and he will separate the people one from another, as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. He will put the sheep on his right and the goats on his left. Then the king will say to those on his right, "Come, you who are blessed by my Father, take your inheritance, the kingdom prepared for you since the creation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. I needed clothes, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you looked after me. I was in prison, and you came to visit me. Then the righteous will answer, Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink? When did we see you a stranger and invite you in, or needing clothes and clothe you? When did we see you sick or in prison and go to visit you? The king will reply, truly I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me. Then he will say to those on his left, depart from me, you who are cursed, into the eternal fire prepared for the devil and his angels. For I was hungry, and you gave me nothing to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me nothing to drink. I was a stranger, and you did not invite me in. I needed clothes, and you did not clothe me. I was sick and in prison, and you did not look after me. They also will answer, Lord, when did we see you hungry or thirsty or a stranger or needing clothes or sick or in prison and did not help you? He will reply, truly I tell you, whatever you did not do for one of the least of these, you did not do for me. Then they will go away to eternal punishment, but the righteous to eternal life. The whole focus of Jesus' life was not to describe heaven to us, but to be sure that we got there. And the way that we live every day is going to determine that, along, of course, with our faith. So, I'm in the business of seeing a lot of sick people and a lot of hurting people and people that have made terrible choices and with their lives and with their bodies and with their marriages. And, I don't do enough, honestly. So, I think if you ask Jesus about heaven, He'd want to know where you are right now. And so that's the point of just a few minutes for me to talk about this is something that we can't even fathom. Whatever you're going through now is waiting. You want to be sure that as you live every day, that you look forward to this by the way that you live on earth. So I'd really like to know thoughts, disagreements. The Bible is amazingly accurate and consistent on what it says about heaven. So, any comments? Yes, sir, Larry.
Just a comment. I was thinking about this. During the days of Moses, the Israelites were looking for the promised land. That was what they were looking for.
Mm-hmm.
Heaven is our promised land.
Right. That's right. So on and on in the Old Testament, the patriarchs, the prophets, the Moses, there's always something just out there. You're right. The promised land. For us, it's exactly the same thing. You're exactly right. Yes, ma'am.
I'd be interested in your opinion as a physician about people's near-death experiences. Have you had patients?
I never have. No. They're either, it's one thing or the other, unfortunately, for my patients. I did a lot of looking into some of these, and most of even the Christians and really some scientists and people that study the Bible, it's very difficult to correlate some of the stories they tell about actually seeing people and talking to people, and they just don't really jive very well with some of the other descriptions in the Bible. But I would never venture, to say that did not happen. And it seems like there's always a light, there's always an angel, there's somebody there waiting for them. It's over and over and over and over consistently. So it's open to me, but it's a tough one. Yes, Marlene.
I don't have an opinion on this, but I just have a footnote in my Bible that when Jesus says, the least of these brothers of mine, that he's talking about the Jewish people. And the footnote says, the criterion for judgment will be the kind of treatment shown to the Jewish people. Ultimately, how a person treats the Jewish people will reveal whether or not he is saved.
Somebody's opinion, like you said.
Somebody's opinion.
Somebody's opinion, like
It's
you
something
said.
to think about.
Right. Well, thank you very much, and hope this is an encouraging word